Hey, everybody, and welcome to Common Good Conversations, a podcast working to create deeper narratives at the intersection of faith and politics for the common good in West Michigan. My name is Nick Brock, and I'm the executive director for Vote Common Good West Michigan. Today, I have the privilege of being in conversation with Robb Ryerse. In 2018, Robb launched a grassroots campaign for Congress. Spoiler alert, though, he lost. But he's winning now by helping people run for office with his dedication for the common good and saving democracy. Robb's trained candidates with national political organizations and been on staff and state for local campaigns. Robb is also the political director for Vote Common Good. But the big reason for why Robb is here today is to talk about his latest political project called You Could Run for Office, an online training course to help candidates run a competitive campaign with confidence. Robb Ryerse, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Nick. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's always good to have you on the program, just to talk in general. Boy, let's we could dive in, but do we have any good stories about being on the bus or anything like that that we should?
I, uh, Nick, I feel like we have unsettled business about the proper role of potato chips in lunches, particularly lunches that are sandwich oriented. I feel
Yeah,
like you have rules about this kind of stuff that is just mind-boggling to me.
yeah, mind-boggling rules. So listener, beware. Beware about
So,
this
yeah,
story.
so y- it's it's if you're eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for lunch, it's okay to have potato chips as a side.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know what?
But
I
if you're
don't know.
having oh, but
I
if
don't know.
you don't know because you've never had
Yeah, so that's where the debate lies, right? So, this whole debate
it.
was caused when we were, last year rolling down the interstate on the Vote Common Good bus, and I'm sitting next to Doug, and I look over at him, and he is eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with chips as a side
Yeah,
and on it.
yeah,
And I looked at it, and I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
wait, Doug, what are you doing?
But he's having a very normal lunch.
But not to me. I had never seen anybody do that in my entire life. Chips on a sandwich or as a side for sure, but with a deli, style meat. We're talking,
Deli meat.
ham,
Yeah,
turkey, chicken breast,
that's acceptable.
Yeah, that's what I do. I'm gonna put my chips there, but I never saw anybody do it with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So then Doug was like, "Oh, this is totally normal. People do
Yeah,
this all the time."
yeah,
And I refute that.
yeah,
So
yeah. You know
so
what
that
Doug?
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You know what Doug often eats for breakfast? Doug, a,
Go
a
ahead.
piece of toast with peanut butter on it
Uh-huh.
and a fried egg on top.
Okay. You know what? See, I can do that. I haven't put the fried egg right on top, but if I
Yeah.
have, like some scrambled eggs, if I go to a restaurant or something like that, I'll get the toast, put the peanut butter on, and I will put my eggs on there and eat it.
Oh wow,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's.
So that's
I mean,
something new to you.
I don't hate it. I don't hate the idea. I just haven't tried it. But yeah, that's.
And that's where
I
I
mean, Doug.
was.
I think clearly what we're learning here is that our friend Doug Padgett, the executive director of Vote Common Good National, is he's just got strange eating habits.
Yeah, strange eating habits, and you learn a lot about people
Though I'll tell
when
you,
you're on a bus.
yeah, I'm with him on the potato chips with peanut butter and jelly sandwich though.
Okay. All right. So you've done that before and you continue to do that again.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. I've every time I make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and
Yeah.
I make my sandwich with crunchy peanut butter because that is the
Oh,
best kind of peanut butter.
oh,
Oh my God, another
oh,
debate.
oh, oh.
This
I just recoiled at
ah,
just the thought of crunchy peanut butter.
really,
Oh,
what
oh.
is the problem? I don't get it.
I want my peanut butter smooth.
That's how Wyatt likes it too. My 7-year-old
Yeah.
son, he wants smooth peanut butter, and I'm like,
Hmm.
bro, you are missing out
Yeah.
on how to live life.
Yeah. So when I was in college, I remember, I think I read a book, maybe it was Larry Crabb book on this, maybe it was The Silence of Adam. I can't remember, but I had read a book about masculinity, and it was, most of it was just complete bunk. Um, but one of the things that stuck with me is they used the illustration of Jacob and Esau from the Bible, and talking about how, the Bible describes Esau a little bit like you, Nick Brock, with this,
Totally hairy and
hairy beard, just outdoorsy kind of, gonna rip something apart with my bare hands.
yeah, too much testosterone.
Yeah, and Jacob, as is described, as a smooth man, and who stays at home and takes care of his mom and isn't out hunting, and so this book goes on to describe, there's hairy men and there's smooth men. There's men that, like, work in the garage and, like, are mechanics and, like, have grease under their fingernails. And
Uh-huh.
then there's the men who, wear a suit to work, and, like, and I don't know if you can clearly make that kind of divide quite so much, but I've always thought of myself as a smooth man, um, and
Uh-huh.
that extends even to my peanut butter.
Yeah, well, this got real theologically deep. This is go back all the way to the book of Genesis. I never thought that we could take a piece of scripture and apply it to
What
the
the
peanut
peanut
butter we're
butter? Yeah.
eating today.
Oh, absolutely.
I should have known it though. I should have known the Bible has many interpretations, and one of those can be for peanut butter in the
Yes,
21st
it
century.
it can be twisted to apply to just about anything.
A lot of people are good at that.
Hmm.
Oh man, good story. Well, I think I don't know if we've settled that because I have yet to put chips on my peanut butter.
Yeah. Well, here's the question: do you remain judgmental of people who put
Totally.
chip? Oh.
Yep. Yep. Because
Okay.
every time I make
Okay.
my own
So
sandwich,
yeah, that's the
I
growth. That's the growth edge for you.
I
Is
know. I know
it's
during my prayers this morning, during my my examen, which I do maybe once every 6 months. There's this part for growth, and maybe it's that part for growth and putting the chips on. I just continue to refuse.
yeah. I mean, I, you don't have to have chips on your peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but maybe a little bit of grace for the people that do.
Okay. Yep. Now we're talking a little more grace for other folks in doing so, and I won't have that look of disdain. Uh, Next time we're on the bus and Doug does that again, it's like,
Right.
Doug, what did I tell you? What did I
What
tell
are
you
you
about
doing?
this?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's a good story. So let's maybe let's move that story into a
Yeah.
little bit of your own personal story, because I always like to hear this, and I think it's really good for the listener to hear about how you got involved in
Yeah.
politics. Like, this is something that you've been swimming in for a long time. So
Yeah.
what hooked you into all this? And I'll give the maybe the preface here is like, what hooked you into as a teenager and kid into the Republican Party?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a conservative Republican house, where, we were fundamentalist Christians, and and like Doug likes to say, the Republican identity came along as, the fries in the combo meal, like we were Christians and so we were Republicans. And I had, parents that, totally involved in church. My dad was a pastor, and also super involved with Republican politics. And yeah, and not so much, I mean, not like the organizing and the, local party work and that kind of stuff, but much more just the, being aligned with Republicans. And it was type of thing that, like, if you were a Christian, there was no way you'd be a Democrat. Like, they're just, those two things just didn't go together at all. And so, like, that was what I grew up in. And, and it was that conservative perspective was reinforced everywhere. It was reinforced at church. It was reinforced at the Christian school that I attended. It was reinforced in the contemporary Christian music that I listened to. It was, it was everywhere. And, it's that weird thing of, like, the stuff that interests you as a kid. And, I had, as a kid, I had two great loves. One was the Cleveland Browns and the other was, politics. And so, I'm 15 years old and I've got subscriptions to two magazines that come every month.
Sports Illustrated and
National Review.
National Review.
Which is, the, like, conservative magazine, founded by William F. Buckley. And, I followed politics. I listened to the Rush Limbaugh show. I actually, when I was 16, I skipped school one day and called into the Rush Limbaugh show and got on the air. I went on. I was a guest, I was a caller on the Rush Limbaugh show like 5 times in my life. So
Wow. What was your big rant? I mean, maybe out of all those 5, what was the rant?
So the first one was, it was during George H.W. Bush's re-election campaign, and David Duke had entered the race, who was, KKK Grand Wizard, along with Pat Buchanan. And my theory was that and so I called Rush to ask him this, does David Duke's arrival into this race, does that actually open the door for Pat Buchanan to be more successful in the primary against George H.W. Bush? Because, we wanted Pat Buchanan to be president.
So thinking very strategically.
Yeah. So and I don't remember all the details now, but yeah. And then, so we ended up, having a conversation about presidential politics. So so it goes deep. I mean, I had pictures of Newt Gingrich and Bob Dole and Al D'Amato, senator from New York, and Oliver North, on my wall. I was deep into it.
Did you go to school with a suit and tie?
Yeah.
I just picture like this Michael Scott character as a child, and he goes to school with a suit and tie. That wasn't you.
Basically Alex P. Keaton from Family Ties, like that. Yeah, that.
Got it.
That's where.
So that was the lane that you were given.
Yeah, and so
according to your church and upbringing.
Yeah, and so my plan was to go into politics. Through some weird circumstances, it's kind of a long story I won't get into. I ended up in at a Bible college in Pennsylvania, where my parents had gone and my sisters had gone, and so I ended up there. And my plan was to transfer out of there at the end of my freshman year, and go to Grove City College, which in Pennsylvania, which is a now known as a hotbed of conservative politics. I was going to go there and study constitutional law, and go into politics. That was the plan. But I'm at this little Bible college, and during the Bible conference that we had each year, my freshman year, we had a preacher come, and he preached a sermon, and he said, if God calls you to be a pastor, you'd have to stoop to be a king. And that line, obviously like stuck with me.
Uh-huh.
And it was in that moment where I was quote unquote called to ministry to be a pastor, where I thought, listen, being a pastor is a higher calling than going into politics. And
Mm-hmm.
so I look back at that as that was my call to ministry to be a pastor. So the end of my freshman year, one of my professors, our world civilization professor, a guy named Dr. Carter, that was near and dear to us, uh, he would take us on field trips, and so we went to Washington D.C. And he had this thing. He told us that, listen, if you get a meeting with your congressman and interview your congressman and write a little short report about it, you don't have to do your like final term paper or something. Or you don't have to take a final exam or something. So I was like,
Oh
oh
yeah.
shoot, I'm doing that.
Yeah,
Um,
I do that as
so,
well.
so I get this meeting with Sherwood Boehlert, who is my congressman, from
What's his name?
Sherwood Boehlert.
Oh,
He
that's a
was
real Arkansas, right? Arkansas name.
no, upstate
Oh,
New
this is
York.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
Okay.
I lived in upstate New York.
Okay.
And he was a moderate Republican. I didn't like him because he was a pro-choice Republican. He's actually the type of Republican these days that like we just need a whole lot
Uh-huh.
more of. But then I didn't like him. But I had a meeting with him, and at the end of this meeting, he offered me a job in his office.
Mm.
And so I super flattered by that. Go back to campus. About a week later, I get a letter in the mail from his office, and I've got this like crossroads moment of what am I going to do? Like, am I going to stay here at this Bible college and train to be a pastor because God called me to do that? Am I going to go to Grove City College and be and study constitutional law and become a conservative mastermind, or am I going to go to Washington D.C. and work for my congressman and get into the nitty gritty of politics? um so I chose to become a pastor and kind of set the political thing aside, and followed it and continued to have interest, but was not involved. um Fast forward to 2016, and Donald Trump gets elected president, and like everything changes for me because I had this realization that um the tribes that I belong to, the Republican Party, evangelical Christians, white evangelical Christians, that these tribes that that I've been a part of my whole life, were responsible for the greatest threat to democracy, as Doug likes to say, that the planet and every living being on it. This menace to all of this has been thrust upon the country by the tribes that I belong to, and I had this
Mhm.
sense of like, I've got to do something, and I had
Yeah.
no idea what that meant,
Well,
but I
I think
just
you've said it. Sorry, I think you've said it before where there are two people, if you will, who have changed your life. Number one, Jesus.
Jesus.
Number two, Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, yeah, changed
That's
my life
so
in very different ways, but yeah, the
yeah.
two
Yeah, so continue.
people, yeah, the two people have changed my life more than any. So
I think
I
yeah, that's
just
true for me as well.
yeah, I just had the sense that I needed to do something, but I had no idea what that meant. A little bit of time goes by, and and my wife had listened to a podcast about this group that was recruiting people to run for office, and I came home from work one day, and she held her phone out at me, that because she listened to a podcast on her phone. She holds her phone out at me, and she says, "You've got to listen to this. You've got to do this." And so that evening, I sat and listened to this podcast, and went to bed that night thinking, I might run for Congress. And it's totally bizarre thing to like have a normal day, where you get up, you do your normal stuff, you eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with potato chips on it, and and you go about your life, and you go to bed that evening thinking, you know I might run for Congress. It's just a bizarre thing. So that began a long shot campaign where I was recruited, and trained and supported, endorsed by a group called Brand New Congress, to run for office. And had no I had been in, politically aware my whole life, but like had no idea what it meant to actually run a campaign, to be a candidate, to know what to do. And and so
Well,
I
hold on. So let me ask this, Rob, though, because I know that this is a part of your story, but you know, I just wonder when you made that decision, or were ruin it over you and your wife, like uh, how big of a man, what's the word I'm looking for? Like waking up in just like complete fear, like you just sorry for this, but you're just like shitting a brick, like you're doing that and you're like, oh my god, was that what happened in some way after you make that decision, like this overriding fear because you've never done it before, you
I
didn't have like the support.
yeah, I don't know if it was fear. I mean, one of the things that I've learned about myself and learned about Vanessa and I is that we have a very high tolerance for risk.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've done some risky things in throughout our marriage, and we moved halfway across the country to start a church with no support, and we have worked at jobs where at startups, and we have done some risky things, and we just apparently have a high tolerance for it, and so it kind of felt like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt less like fear, and it was more feelings of, like, the way I describe it is just the craziness of putting the train together as we were going down the tracks.
Yeah.
That sense of like, okay, we've got to do this, and I really have no idea what I'm doing, and guessing at it, and feeling like, and it's really a bizarre thing when you run for office too, because the emotional roller coaster that you go on is crazy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
at one minute you're like, I could win this thing, and the next minute you're like, this is the biggest mistake I've ever made in my life. and you're like bouncing back and forth between those things.
Uh-huh.
um and it was everything from learning about what it takes to get on the ballot. I had no idea what it took to get on the ballot in Arkansas, as it turns out. um where I was running for Congress, I had to pay a fee to get on the ballot, to have my name on the ballot. And as it
Mhm.
turns out, Arkansas has the highest ballot access fees in the country. Had no idea about that. Had no idea about all the technology, the platforms that need to be done. Had no idea how to do political fundraising. No idea about a field approach of canvassing and knocking on doors, and which doors to go to and which doors not to go to. And it just, I mean, so much stuff that, like, I just was like, it was totally learning on the job.
Yeah. So you've said before too, and I think right during this little segment here is you were feeling like you're as a train is going down the tracks, you're just trying to like put everything together. You haven't had any experience in all this, but the one thing that was pushing you is your experience with risk and being more likely to take risks, but like a primary motivation. Like, so for you during that time, what was that motivation? Because you know that
Yeah.
there was potential for you to lose, right?
Yeah.
That's what
Oh,
happened. So what was
yes.
that primary motivation? How, like, that was clearly locked in, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, it was th- the fundamental belief that people deserve a choice, that democracy thrives when people have a choice. So, I ran against a conservative Republican congressman. The experiment was I ran against him in the Republican primary um, from the left, and I ran as a progressive Republican, um,
Hmm.
and so like that was the experiment. Um, but it was rooted in the belief that people deserve a choice, and democracy calls us to that and and if we surrender the democratic system to only the people who are politically connected, only the people who have gotten the blessing of the party and therefore have access to the millions and millions and millions of dollars, um, you know, democracy, that's not what's best for the country. There was a film made about a short documentary short was made about my campaign, and and the producer ended up naming the documentary True Believer, which I find kind of funny, um like I really am a believer in like it I'm sure I sound kind of idealistic when I talk about like regular people running for office and how important it is.
Hmm.
um ordinary Americans, like extraordinary ordinary Michiganders need to run for office. um Regular people who are experts in some area of life, but the thing that holds them back is that they're not experts in politics. They're not experts at running a campaign. We absolutely need their voices, their perspective. Like right now in American history, we need teachers, we need educators, we need doctors and nurses, and like people who like small business owners. Like we need normal regular people to run for office, people who have been who have built up some expertise in life and bring that perspective to bear, because everything has gotten way too skewed by people that are just out of touch with everyday regular Americans.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a nice transition into your political work with you could run for office. So, this idea of needing extraordinary, ordinary people, kind of non-politicians, and that's really interesting because here in West Michigan and most specifically Ottawa County with Ottawa Impact, that was part of their MO as
Yeah.
well. It's like we need some regular people, and they highlight that too. Like we
Hmm.
have, there's a nurse practitioner or a small business person. None of these people had ran for office before, so there's just this
Yeah.
national sense, right? Like we need regular people with these skills in these particular areas to give voice. People are just tired of the politics as usual, right? But what I think
Hmm.
is interesting for Ottawa County is that what you said earlier, people deserve a choice. Democracy should offer a choice to the people. Now, one of the ways that the Ottawa Impact Commissioners achieved office was because they weren't challenged
Yeah.
in their general election. They
Yeah.
won in the primary because they're the uh, for most cases there was nobody to outdo them as a Democrat, or even they beat out some of the Republicans. But when they went to the primary, there was no opposition. So this is where I want to speak to those who
Yep.
live in Ottawa County and who are really interested in running for a county commission seat, and
Yeah.
maybe wanting to run as a Republican, offering that choice, running
Hmm.
as a Democrat. So let's get into this, Rob. You could run for office. You have the tagline where it says you want to make a difference in your community, but you don't know where to start, and you say you're not alone. So
Hmm.
let's hear it, Rob.
Yeah.
Let's give your pitch.
Well, after working with candidates around the country, um, in a variety of roles with different organizations, and working directly on campaigns, um, came to the realization that there are so many people that do want to make a difference. They want to do something. They are super frustrated. They feel exactly like I did in 2016, where there's that sense of like, I've got to do something. What can I do? But they don't know where to start, and the system makes it difficult for regular people to engage. And so, what I'm trying to do is bring the experience that I have of doing it, and no being in that position of, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm putting the train together as I go down the tracks. I I am an outsider doing this, so I recognize like what that's all about. But at the same time, since then, I've had the opportunity to work with some candidates and some campaigns that have done a really amazing job at this, and I've learned what it takes, and how it works.
Mm-hmm.
So what we've done is put together a real simple process. It's an online course with video lessons that just walk people through, like, if you're thinking about running for office, here are the questions you need to ask yourself. Here are the things you need to do. um as you're getting started, here's what you're going to need. You're going to need to set up a committee. You're probably going to need a post office box. You're going to need um a way to raise money, and so kind of just walking through both some of the nitty gritty of that kind of stuff, as well as kind of pulling back a little bit and saying, okay, what's motivating you?
Mm-hmm.
um and how can you um figure out the things that you want to do for your community, and let that be the why that drives you throughout this. And so, like, the whole course is designed to demystify like what's needed. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's set up with relatively short video lessons. I don't think any of them are longer than 15 or 20 minutes, um, where it's myself and a friend of mine who was my campaign manager on my campaign, a guy named Scott Ramsey, that I've worked with closely on a variety of things. It's Scott and I teaching some lessons. There's lots of resources that go along with that. There's checklists and templates and things that can help you put a budget together, help you you know put a script together to ask people for money. And there's a whole list of resources, that are technology resources that so, like, trying to just make it not nearly as overwhelming as it can be for regular folks to do.
Oh, hold on. Let me get rid of this. Excuse me. So, there's a lot of helpful resources in there for people just going through the nitty gritty and the logistical things that can really frustrate people. Um, y- I, w- I want to talk about this a little bit. So, because I think this may be, some point of frustration for people is, well, okay, who is Robb Ryerse? So he talks about, experience here and there and, with Vote Common Good. But do you want to, uh, I guess, talk a little bit more about the like who you're working with, or in your previous
Yeah.
experience, I think that might lend some
Yeah.
credibility
Yeah.
to what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I mean, I've had the opportunity to um work with some folks, and so brand new Congress that recruited me to run for office. I was a part of an original cohort of candidates that included like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. If your listeners saw the film, the Netflix documentary, "Knock Down the House," with um, AOC and Paula Jean Swearingen and Cori Bush and Amy Villela, um, that were running for office, they were all, uh, in the cohort of candidates I was a part of.
Hmm.
So I got a front row seat for some really exciting stuff, and then I spent the 2020 um, cycle as um, the executive director of Brand New Congress. I moved into that role, and we endorsed and supported over 40 candidates around the country. We got 6 of them elected to Congress, including Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, who's now in the news as the as the fire alarm pulling congressman from New York.
All right.
Yeah. So you know, so uh, did that work. Also worked with Vote Common Good and putting together our candidates for Common Good program, which had in 2022 had over 100 candidates around the country, including people like Katie Porter and
Hmm.
Tim Tim Ryan, Josh Shapiro, John Fetterman, just lots of folks around the country that were candidates for Common Good.
Hmm.
And then I've worked on some local campaigns, helped a state representative candidate in Kansas who was running in a district that Republicans had won by 30 points in the past, and we cut that in by more than a half. And really move the needle in that way. I worked in 2022 on Chris Jones's campaign for governor of Arkansas, who's running against Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and Chris and I have started an organization called Vortex PAC,
Hmm.
which to recruit and train and support congressional candidates here in Arkansas. And so we've done that. We've got 4 congressional candidates that are running here in Arkansas that we're supporting and helping to to really grow the opportunity for Democratic voters to be engaged here in Arkansas on the congressional line. So all that to say, like, what happened in 2016 with Donald Trump being elected led to a whole bunch of political involvement, which has given me like the opportunity to be a part of and to be on the front row for all sorts of different campaigns.
Yeah.
So like, from local school board races to state legislative stuff to statewide races to federal and even Senate races, like, so it's been quite a journey over the last few years, and all I've wanted to do is to take as much of that as possible and bring it back to folks and say, listen, these folks aren't special. They're just doing it, and you can do it too. And like
Yeah.
there's like the difference between the critic and the artist is that the artist did the work, and like there's nothing special about it necessarily. It's just a matter of doing it. And we put this course together to to help people, just do it. Like it really is like you could run, like you could
Yeah.
do this. You could totally do this.
That's funny. I have this kind of similar thing, not political, but about like recognizing just that people are very regular
Mm-hmm.
at various levels. And it was when I joined the military. So I joined the military when I was 24 years old, the United States Air Force. And, you know, I grew up, I think everybody does to a certain degree, kind of, like, oh, the military, it's this huge thing.
Yeah.
And like, oh, everything's so organized and the people there are the best and brightest. But, as I got to do my job on a daily basis, I was like, boy, we are just some regular people here. There's even people in leadership who had been, in the military for a long time. It was just like regular people still trying to
Yes.
figure things out. They had like very basic questions, and we're all kind of trying to do it together. So that
Yeah.
really blew my mind.
Yes. Yeah.
So like that just really parlays
Yeah.
here into like running for office. Just like
Yeah.
very, very regular people. And then if you're in the right places, you can get the right type of support that you need. Which is, where I want to talk about this support then. So, there's, a more progressive bend in our work, right, with
Mm-hmm.
candidates and perhaps how we view our politics. But, there are Republicans who,
Mm-hmm.
are wanting to push out these more extreme versions of the Republican candidates and party what's going on. What would be your pitch to them where they're thinking, oh, Rob, Nick, I'm a Republican, but I want to push back against this extremism, and I'll just point it like I want to push back against Ottawa Impact. Like, what does Rob have for
Yeah.
me? Like, how can I
Yes.
trust him? To be advisor for me? It's just I think that's
Yeah.
an important thing to ask.
Yeah. I I am a lifelong Republican, though now I'm registered as an independent. I'm a lifelong Republican who you know for the since 2016 have done everything I can to push back against the extremism in the Republican Party. Um and and so I think that you could run for office is not ideologically driven. It's much more tactical and strategic than ideological. Um, it's not about advocating for a particular set of policies. It's much more about the nuts and bolts of how to run. And so if there's um, a moderate Republican or a team normal conservative Republican who says like, hey, we gotta like these MAGA people that are like pushing the country in the totally wrong direction. Oh yeah, totally. Like I totally get that, and I've been there, and want to be supportive of as much of that effort as possible.
Yeah. So there's obviously a clear willingness to work with Republicans, and even coming from that background yourself, understanding kind of that mindset. So, and then now here, there's this other piece in Ottawa County where Doug Paget and I did an event last night on a Thursday talking about confronting Christian nationalism in Ottawa County. Now,
Mm.
Christian nationalism is uh, taking its effect nationally and trickling down into Ottawa County. And I pulled that out for people and talking about what that looks like when Ottawa Impact does A, B, and C. So, as a candidate in Ottawa County runs against a commissioner, they might want to confront that as well. They might want to confront this Christian nationalism, or people might talk to them about that idea. Like, how does your faith, if they're a person of faith, like how does it influence politics, or should it influence politics? How does it work along that spectrum of faith and government. So, how would you then go about that work in helping that candidate? So there's, the work that you do for
Yeah.
you could run for office, and then,
Yeah.
what you do with Vote Common Good.
Yeah. That's really important stuff. I think, I firmly believe that right now, the way, it's interesting. I've had the opportunity to meet with school board organizations and school board candidates around the country um, during this cycle, because ever since conservatives, the religious right, got the Supreme Court, school boards really became the front line in the culture war. And so, training and helping school board candidates kind of push back against Christian nationalism has been really important. And one of the things that I've been telling school board candidates around the country is that, listen, it's important to engage and talk and try to convince people who are Christian nationalists or are sympathetic to Christian nationalism to think differently and to have a different perspective. It's good to do that kind of persuasion and engagement. But at the same time, we have to organize politically. That like Christian nationalism is organizing politically and is attempting to win at the ballot box in all sorts of races. And if we want to stop Christian nationalism, we have got to organize politically and win campaigns, win elections. And that is not just at the top with stopping Donald Trump, but it's up in its state legislative races, it's school board races, it's county commissioner races. It's like these races really matter, and we've got to organize politically. So anybody who's feeling like, oh, Christian nationalism is kind of a threat, what do I do? Well, one of the things you might do, and how do I talk to my uncle about this? Yeah, that's important. You talk to your uncle about it, but maybe you need to run for office because the Christian nationalist who's running for school board or running for county commissioner, frankly, is more of a threat than your uncle is.
Totally. Yeah.
and we've got to be organized politically to win those races. So this part of what this course is about is just somebody has that feeling of okay, I want to do this. I see the need that these folks need to be stopped and these races need to be won at the ballot box. Well, okay, how do I do? Okay, that's having that sense and that desire isn't enough. You've got to have the skills and the roadmap to go with it, and that's where this course comes in to say, okay, oh, you want to do this? Here's how.
Yeah.
Here's the roadmap. We're going to help you. That when I ran for Congress in 2017 into 2018, if I had this course to watch and to take notes and to be a roadmap, I don't necessarily think that I, would be in Congress now. But I know that I wouldn't have felt like I was making it up as I went along.
Yeah.
Like I did.
Yeah. Rob,
Yeah,
so
that's why we say what we're trying to do is to help you run a competitive race, because we can't guarantee if you take this course you're going to win. Can't make that guarantee because who knows?
No guarantees, no money back on the program.
Well, yeah, there's some money back. There's a money back policy, but there's no guarantees that you're going to win. We can guarantee that we can help you run a competitive race with confidence.
Yeah.
That you can run a race that you can be proud of, and you can do that with a sense of okay, I know what I'm doing. And so that's what we're trying to provide for folks.
Yeah. Rob, we've got a few minutes left here, and I want to close just with two more things. So there's a friend of mine in Ottawa County. He ran for state as a state rep in the last cycle in Ottawa County, and he uses this analogy in encouraging people to run for office. And I don't know if it's an encouragement for everybody, but he said, like, when you run for office, it's like that person has to be, if you see a house on fire, right? There are two kinds of people, right? So maybe there's, like we talked about earlier, there's two kinds of people: smooth people, and then like kind of more hairy, rough people. But his analogy was like, there are people who run to the fire, and then people who maybe just kind of go the other way. So there's this, people who run to it or go the other way. It just kind of this way about them. And you mentioned here that you had this experience of not knowing what to do, or being more prone to taking some risks. How would you, I don't
Yeah.
know, how would you encourage people to really move over that hump if they're not like one of those people who considers themselves to go towards a fire?
Yeah, that's a good question. Listen, we need all sorts of people doing all sorts of different things. So if someone doesn't have the desire to run for office, doesn't feel like they're cut out to do it, doesn't have the fire in their belly or the passion, I would encourage them to probably find something else, like some other way to be involved. But the person who has that sense of like, oh, I need to do this, I just don't know how, I don't know where to get started, like that's the kind of person that we want to try to help. Um, um, and that, because it's difficult. Like, I mean, we don't sugarcoat it. Like, running for office is not an easy. It's not an easy thing. It's not like I won't say to people like, oh yeah, take this course. It's piece of cake. You'll fly right through. No, it is difficult. It's hard to do. And it takes time. It takes energy. It's emotional labor. Costs money. It's stressful for your family. It's a difficult thing. But listen, the stakes are so high right now. The stakes are so high. I mean, I joke, often, my kids ask me, "Oh, Dad, what are you up to?" And I say, "Oh, just trying to save democracy." That's all,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and there's it's a joke, but that's where we're at. The stakes are super high right now in our country for the rights of people, the rights of women, of the LGBT community, um, and kids getting quality education. It's just it the the threat of I don't want to overstate it, with words like fascism, but we are we have there is the possibility that we could have a much more high control government in our lives, and that is a concerning thing, and so it's like this is an all hands on deck kind of moment for us as a country, that we've got to push back on this thing. Some of us thought, okay, Donald Trump was defeated in 2020, job well done, and we're good. And then January 6th happened, and the Dobbs decision happened, and a variety of other things were like, oh, the work continues, and that's where we're at. We have got to do this work, and we need people involved. And what we're trying to do with You Could Run is to say, okay, we need people to run for office, and so we're going to train up as many of them as we can.
Yeah. So let me Rob, we got 1 minute left, and I'm going to talk to the listener right here. So, hey, listener, if any of this sounds good to you, or if you know somebody who might be interested in that, Rob and I would love to connect with you. We've been talking about putting together a webinar where we can Rob will go over the material a little more in depth here, and then you can take some next steps to follow up there. So that's what we have in the mix for you as a possible candidate in Ottawa County, wanting to run against Ottawa Impact. Let's see what else here. So what you can do then is, listener, you can email me, Nick Brock, at Vote Common Good West Michigan. So if you go to the website, there is a link there where you can connect with me, or you can go just to the email. It's votecommongood.wm@gmail.com. And in the episode show notes, I'll put a link for how you can connect with Rob at You Could Run for Office. All right, Rob. Thanks for your time this morning and helping us figure out what we can do to run for office. Appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nick.